Господу помолимся. Благостоянии святых Божьих церквей и соединении всех, Господу помолимся. Господи, помилуй. О святем храме сем и с верою, благоговением и страхом Божиим ходящих вонь, Господу помолимся. Господи, помилуй. Господине и Отце нашим святейшим патриарсе Кирилле, честнем пресвитерстве во Христе диаконстве, о всем притче и людях, Господу помолимся.
All right. Still on letter 11 on friendship. Let's start at the top of the last page we were on. Sooner or later, the inner closeness of persons, the closest intertwining of two inner worlds, manifests itself. Before I loved thee as a brother, but now I do respect thee as my soul, says one of Shakespeare's heroes. Previously, the relationship was superficial, external. Now it has plunged down to the mystical roots of friends. The communion of souls occurs now not in phenomena, but deeper. According to the Russian proverb, a friend is not dear because he is good, but good because he is dear. Every outsider seeks mine, not me, whereas a friend wants not mine, but me. The apostle writes, I seek not yours, but you, 2 Corinthians 12:14. An outsider looks for the work, whereas a friend looks for me, myself. An outsider wants yours, receives from you, from your fullness that is a part, and this part disappears in the hands like foam. Only a friend, wanting you, however you are, receives in you all, fullness, and is enriched by it. To receive from fullness is easy. It is to live on someone else's account. And to give from fullness is not difficult, but to receive fullness itself is difficult, for it is first necessary to receive a friend himself, and to find fullness in him. But a friend cannot be accepted without our giving ourselves, but to give oneself is difficult. A superficial and peripheral gift requires a superficial and peripheral payment, whereas a profound and central gift requires a profound and central giving. Therefore, give to outsiders from your fullness, from yourself, with a generous hand. Do not be a miser in what is yours, but give your meagerness, yourself, only to your friend, secretly, but not before your friend tells you. I ask not for yours, but for you. I love not yours, but you. I cry not about yours, but about you. When the revelation of each in each begins among friends, the whole person becomes transparent in all his fullness, to the point of the friends being able to see what is hidden, to the point of clairvoyance. In every friendship that is of some duration, in every friendship that is of some duration, says Maurice Maeterlinck, no, there comes a mysterious moment when we begin to distinguish, so to speak, the precise place of our friend in relation to the unknown that surrounds him, the attitude of fate toward him. From this moment on, he really belongs to us. An infallible knowledge, it appears, was born in our soul without cause the day when our eyes were opened in such a way and we are certain that a certain event that apparently is lying in wait for a certain person will not be able to overtake him. Henceforth, a special part of the soul reigns over the friendship of even the dimmest beings. A sort of transposition of life occurs, and when we accidentally meet one of those whom we have come to know thus, and speak with him about the falling snow, or about women who are passing by, there is in each of us something that greets the other, examines questions without our knowledge, is interested in coincidences, and speaks about events that are impossible for us to understand. But this interpenetration of persons is the task, not the given, in a friendship. When the interpenetration is achieved, it is in the nature of things that friendship become unbreakable, and faithfulness to the person of the friend stop being an ascesis because it cannot be violated. In the absence of such a higher unity, faithfulness is, as the church consciousness has always considered it, something necessary not only for the preservation of friendship, but even for the very life of the friends. The keeping of a friendship gives everything, while a betrayal is a betrayal not only of the friendship, but even places in jeopardy the very spiritual existence of the unfaithful one, for the souls of the friends had already begun to grow together. There is a passion that lies in wait for friendship, a passion that can instantly tear apart the most sacred of ties. This passion is rage. It is what friends must be most afraid of. One psychologist says, nothing so unrestrainedly destroys the effective prohibitions as rage, because its essence is destruction, and only destruction, as Moltke characterizes war. The most valuable pleasures are trampled by us with cruel joy if they attempt to destroy a friendship, to reject old privileges and rights, to tear any relations and ties. We find a kind of cruel joy in destruction, and what bears the name of weakness of character is apparently reducible, in the majority of cases, to the inability to sacrifice one's lower I and everything that seems dear to it. I would like to cite two tales taken from Vitae that clarify the Church's view of the necessity of remaining faithful to a friendship. A tale entitled Of Two Brothers in Spirit, of the deacon Evagrius and the priest Titus, which was very widespread and popular in its time, recounts how the love of friends was destroyed by a fit of anger and what were the terrible consequences of this destruction. This tale is depicted to edify the community on the vestibule wall of the church of the Zosimus a hermitage near the Trinity St. Sergius Lavra. Here it is. There were two brothers in spirit at the Pechersk monastery, the deacon Evagrius and the priest Titus. Between them was a great and sincere love, and all were amazed by their spiritual unity and immeasurable love. The devil, who hates goodness and always roars like a lion, seeking to devour someone, created hostility and hatred between them. They did not want to see each other's face, and kept away from each other, although the brothers implored them many times to mend their friendship. When Evagrius was in church and Titus approached him with a censer, Evagrius fled the incense, and when he did not do so, Titus passed by without censing him, and for a long time they remained in the darkness of sin. Titus served without asking for forgiveness, while Evagrius took communion while in a state of anger, for the enemy had armed them. It happened that Titus fell gravely ill and lay in despair, and he cried even more over his loss. He sent for the deacon with supplication to tell him, "Forgive me, brother, in the name of God, for I had toward thee an insane anger." The latter cursed him with cruel words, and the monks, seeing that Titus was dying, forcibly compelled Evagrius to take leave of his brother. When the sick man saw his brother, he fell to earth at his feet, crying, and said, "Forgive me, Father, and bless me." The other, pitiless and cruel, refused and said before all of them, "I do not want to have any forgiveness with him, neither in this world nor in the next." Then he escaped from the hands of the brothers and fell. They wanted to raise him, but he was dead. They could not straighten his arms or close his lips. It was as if he had been dead for a long time. Meanwhile, the sick man got up a little later as if he had not been sick at all. The monks were terrified by the sudden death of one and the sudden healing of the other, and with many tears they buried Evagrius' mouth and eyes open and his arms extended. They asked Titus what had happened. He confessed to the monks, "I saw angels who stepped away from me and who cried over my soul, while demons were rejoicing in my anger. And then I started to ask my brother to forgive me. When he was brought to me, I saw an implacable angel who held a fiery lance, and when he did not forgive me, the angel struck him and fell dead. And he fell dead. Then the angel held out his hand to me and set me on my feet. Abba Jacob said, as a lamp lights a dark chamber, so the fear of God enters a man's heart, enlightens him, and teaches him all of God's commandments. In order to clarify what I call faithfulness to friendship, I will present the tale of the Blessed John Moschus about two Jerusalem ascetics who were friends. Here in this fragrant flower from the artless and graciously simple spiritual meadow. This is what Abba John the Hermit, called the Fiery One, said. I heard the following from Abba Stephen the Moabite. Once we were in the monastery of the great St. Theodicy. There were two brothers there who vowed that they would part from each other neither in death nor in life. Even though they were the pillars of the community, one of the brothers was attacked by lust, and not having the strength to withstand the struggle, told his brother, "Let me go, brother, because lust is defeating me, and I am to go into the world." His brother began to admonish him and said, "No, brother, do not spoil your labor." The other brother answering him, "Either go with me so that I could do the deed, or let me go." The brother, not wishing to let him go, went with him to the city. Then the brother who had yielded to the struggle entered a prostitute's den, and the other brother, standing outside, began to sprinkle some earth on his head and to lament powerfully. When the one who had been with the prostitute came out, having done the deed, the other brother told him, "What good, my brother, did you gain from this sin? Did you not rather harm yourself? Let us return to our place." The other told him, "I can no longer return to the desert, but you go, I'll remain in the world." But when, after many efforts, he nevertheless did not succeed in persuading his friend to follow him back to the desert, he too remained in the world, and both began to work to feed themselves. It was at this time that Abraham, a splendid, Carlos, and humble pastor, who had recently founded his monastery of so-called Abrahamites, and who later had become the Archbishop of Ephesus, was building his monastery, the so-called monastery of the Byzantines. Having gone away, both brothers began to work there and to receive payment, and the one fallen in lust would take the payment of both, go every day to the city and spend it on debauchery. The other fasted every day and took great silence upon himself. When doing his work, he did not speak with anyone. The masters, every day seeing him not eating, not speaking, but always in contemplation, mentioned him and his saintly way of life to Abba Abraham. The great Abraham called the laborer into his cell and asked him, "Where are you from, brother, and what is your occupation?" He confessed to him everything and told him, "For the sake of my brother I bear everything, so that God, seeing my sorrow, will save my brother." When he heard this, the divine Abraham told him, "And the Lord gave to you your brother's soul." As soon as Abba Abraham let the brother go, he left the cell. There appeared before him his brother, his brother exclaiming, "My brother, take me to the desert so that I will be saved." He immediately took him to a cave near the Holy Jordan and shut him in the cave. And a short while later, having advanced greatly in his spirit toward God, the friend who was shut in the cave passed away. His brother remained in the same cave in accordance with the vow he had made, so that he, too, would pass away there. Here are some more features of friendship, sketched by life itself. After the death of one dear to me, I acquired his diary. Among many other of life's difficulties, the deceased had been tormented by this tragic character of friendship, by this necessity of sacrificing one's soul for one's friend, or more precisely, by the apparent meaninglessness of such a sacrifice. And it appears to me that there was much mutual misunderstanding. It also appears to me that the deceased did not succeed in humbling himself to the end. But to clarify my thought, to give a concrete idea of friendship, his notes are valuable material. I present several fragments, gathered almost at random, from different places in this diary, almost in their raw form. M is still asleep. He is resting from the matins in the liturgy, but my thought constantly returns to him and chases sleep away. M troubles me. What do I do for him? What do I give him? He is sick in body and soul. He is bored, his soul is empty, and I have not yet given him a single grain of content, and I know this well. I must answer for him before God. I do not even know how to care for my neighbor, for the gospel has revoked the metaphysical understanding of a neighbor, according to which a neighbor, quote-unquote, hopelas, is a relative, that is, a man bound not by visibly spatial ties, but by other ties, more ontological ones. And the gospel has established the geometrical understanding of a neighbor. A neighbor, hopelas, is one who is near, pelas, at one's side, and the one with whom you have been thrown together, the one with whom you have been thrown together, the one near whom you happen to be, is the one you should take care of. And if you have abandoned one friend, that guarantees your faithfulness to someone else. There is no reason to soar to suprastellar heights. Enough Platonism. M is my neighbor, for he is the nearest to me, in the same room with me. But Lord, teach me what I should do to give him peace and joy, so that he would acquire thy peace through me. Should I pray that you feel good or that you be good? I pray for the latter, my friend and brother, and I suffer with your suffering. Maikov says somewhere, if you wish to live without struggle, without storm, without knowing the bitterness of life, to ripe old age, do not seek a friend. I do not call yourself anyone's friend. You will taste fewer joys, but also fewer sorrows. Yes, but the important thing here is this if. In my opinion, not only is the rhythmic alternation of grief and joy with a friend infinitely more valuable than an even and peacefully flowing life in solitude, but I would not trade even continuous grief with a friend for continuous solitary joy. There are things regarding a man about which not he himself but his friend must be concerned. But if the friend does not want to be concerned, then no one should be concerned. If a friend is indifferent to his own doom and that of his friend, then doom must come. One must fall without counting on mercy or surcease. Today it's drunkenness, tomorrow it's something else. The day after tomorrow, it's another thing altogether. The day after that, it's something else. The day after that, it's something else again. And so on and so forth. From day to day, the soul is destroyed. From day to day, the soul is emptied. From day to day, life becomes more meaningless. And if there is no hope for daylight, no hope for anything at all that is better, there is no hope for purity. Lower and lower, more and more fleshly, I pity him and do not dare stop him. One must perish with him. One must fall with him. Time passes, the hours, weeks, months. Strength fades, health fades, everything fades, nothing remains. Not only is there no hope for a better future, there is complete certainty that the worst will happen, and it will go on this way. Everything will become worse and worse. An emptied soul, a soul becoming earthy. The gravestone presses on the breast, and added to this, falsehood. You're asleep, I'll go and chat. All this is falsehood, and M was right to say, don't stick your nose in. I tried, I stuck my nose in, and I'm perishing, and I can't help anyone. I tasted a little honey, and now I'm dying. I must depart. Before I was restrained by the thought of God, but now the chain is twice as strong, out of pity. I pity M. What will become of him? How will he get along without me? And I endure. Nevertheless, I must depart. Lord my God, is that all life is? The life of an average, weak, ordinary man? Is that what life is? Lord Jesus, can it be that this is all that life is? Lord, teach me what to do, how to revive him, how to pull myself away from sin and torpor. I am frightened, O Lord. I am frightened for myself and for others. I am frightened for a human soul. One way or another I must depart either into death or into a monastery, into the desert, Lord. Into the desert take me, drag me by force, if I cannot do anything with myself or with them or with anyone. I have not done anything with myself. How can I help another? And I know that M started sliding downhill the moment he saw that I couldn't handle myself. Perhaps this would have happened even without me, but it would have happened later. But regardless of how I try to reinterpret the reality, I and I alone am to blame. They say this is trivial. Yes, this is trivial. That is trivial. Let it be so. But in this case, it is natural to pose the question, what is positive? What is good? What is there that is not trivial? Nothing, nothing, nothing. The problem is precisely that all of life is rubbish, that in all of life there is nothing good. Better a life full of sin with the consciousness that it is full of sin than a pit and emptiness, than this indifference to holiness and sin, gone in the devil, than this stony absence of feeling. M is clearly avoiding serious conversation, either about objective things or about things that concern us personally. Essential problems need to be solved. He delays, does not want to decide, but if you yourself attempt to reach some decision, he becomes angry and irritated. One has reached the dead point. He shows tenderness only when you assent to his despair and to your own despair, but only make a peep against this, and he throws a fit or pouts for days on end. And I also, poor, because I do not know what I am to do, how I am to be. Lord, Lord, help my ineptitude, my sin, my ignorance, my despair, and M's despair. He does not want to think about anyone or anything, although by nature he is not at all an egotist. If I say people are sleeping in that room, in other words, don't go in, he'll say, well, so what? What affair is it of mine? Well, let it be. It is as if I am complaining about someone. One must pray more, that's what. Sexual abstinence, if it is not accompanied by an excited state, is not harmful physiologically or, in any case, not especially harmful. And in the occult and mystical respect, it even serves to develop new capabilities. But abstinence connected with a state of excitedness, that is, with the imagining that one can transcend oneself through sex, is harmful, and the more vivid is the imagining, and the more harmful such abstinence will be. The soul becomes foul and rots in the same way that the body perishes. Perhaps the chief harm is from a constant lack of satisfaction. Should one not say the same thing about the transcending of oneself through the communion of souls in friendship? For marriage is two in one flesh, while friendship is two in one soul. Marriage is unity of flesh, homosarkia, while friendship is unity of souls, homosokia. Solitude, if it does not have as its inseparable companion the constant thought of a friend, is not harmful and is even useful in some respects, for example in the ascesis of silence. But the imagining of friendship in solitude has a harmful effect, a particular harm for a person. A particular person is depleted and dies when, desiring and thinking of friendship, he is compelled to spend a lot of time in company, to socialize without real friendship, to imagine that he really is transcending himself when he is not really transcending himself, and to act as if this were a real self-transcending. Not obtaining spiritual satisfaction, but eternally running after it and near it, one teases oneself with the dream of one's imagination, and one's spiritual powers are spent on this dream. Is this not the case with me? But even if it is the case, I cannot, do not dare, must not leave M. Let there be nothing, and let a spiritual, and perhaps not only a spiritual, grave await me. But I will not leave him. If it is necessary to perish, then we shall perish together. We cannot live together, so let us perish together. With this, let us end the excerpt from the diary. Friendship gives the loftiest joy, but it also demands the strictest ascesis. Every day, hour and minute, ruining my soul with sorrow for the sake of a person, for the sake of my friend, in joy I acquire this soul restored. Just as agape toward a person gives birth to philia toward him, so here too in friendship, sovereign agape is embodied in philia as in a living medium. Divine agapic love transubstantiates philic love, and on this summit of human feeling, like clouds brushing against the twin-peaked Ararat, the heavenly swirls above the earthly. Greater love, agapin, hath no man than this, that a man lay down his soul for his friends. Uperton philon autou. John 15:13. The greatest agapic love is realizable only in relation to friends, not in relation to all people, not in general. The greatest agapic love consists in the laying down of one's soul for one's friends, but it would be extremely simplistic to interpret this to mean that one dies for them. Dying for friends is only the final, not the most difficult, step on the ladder of friendship, but before dying for one's friends, one must be their friend. and this is achieved by long and difficult ascesis. One of Ibsen's heroes says, "One can die for the life's task of another, but one cannot live for the life's task of another." But the essence of friendship lies precisely in the losing of one's soul for the sake of one's friend. This is the sacrifice of one's entire organization, one's freedom and calling. He who wishes to save his soul must lay down all of it for his friends, and his soul will not live again if it does not die. Friendship is necessary for an ascetic life, but it cannot be realized by human powers and requires assistance. And so how can one characterize psychologically and mystically the natural striving toward unity of friendship? By means of what does friendship acquire grace-giving assistance, and by what is the decision taken reinforced for the consciousness? What bond binds friendship so that it stops being subjective wanting and becomes objective will? For in order always to overcome one's selfhood, in order to mend 1,000 times the connecting fibers of friendship, inevitably torn as a result of the sin of the friends and external influences, there has to be some memento, something concrete with which the inner decision to bear everything to the end would be associated. Also needed is a mysterious current of energy which constantly renews the first dazzling time of friendship. Traditionally, there have been two such reinforcements of friendship. One, the natural sacrament, may the reader forgive this inappropriate combination of words, of the pledging of brotherhood, and two, the grace-giving office of adelphopoiesis, akuleutia ais adelphopoiesis, or ais adelphopoieia, which grew out of this sacrament as from the fruitful natural soil. Here I will analyze neither the one nor the other, for such an analysis would take us far from the domain of theosophy and personal religious experiences into ethnology and liturgics. Let me only note that the pledging of brotherhood consists, in essence, of a real unification through an exchange of blood and names, and sometimes even an exchange of shirts, clothes, and weapons, or through co-partaking of sacred food, a vow of faithfulness, and a kiss. Not all these elements have to be present at the same time in the given concrete form of the pledging. The pledging of brotherhood clearly corresponds to a natural religious consciousness. On the other hand, in the office of adelphopoiesis, the exchange of blood and co-partaking of sacred food are replaced by Holy Communion, by the co-partaking of the blood of Christ, while the exchange of names is replaced by the exchange of crosses, which corresponds to the exchange of Christian names. The half-ecclesiastical, half-popular rite of adelphopoiesis is accomplished through an exchange of crosses, a vow of brotherly love and faithfulness before an icon in church, and by the brothers alternately holding a burning candle during the cherubic hymn. There are different versions of this rite, but its chief elements are as follows. 1. The brothers are to be positioned in the church before the lectern, upon which rest the cross and the gospel. The older of the two stands to the right, while the younger stands to the left. 2. Prayers and litanies are said that ask the two to be united in love, and that remind them of examples of friendship from church history. The two are tied with one belt, their hands are placed on the gospel, and a burning candle is given to each of them. For the apostle, 1 Corinthians 12:27 to 13:8, and the gospel, John 17:18 through 26, are read. 5 more prayers and litanies like those indicated in 2 are read. 6. Our Father is read. 7. The brothers to be partake the lectern while they hold hands, the following troparion being sung, Lord, watch from heaven and see. 9. They exchange kisses, and 10. The following is sung, Behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. Psalm 133:1. Sometimes the exchange of crosses is added to this, but it is possible that this exchange had not become an essential part of the rite, because the brothers-to-be could exchange crosses even before the rite. Along with the communion together, this exchange is the most important ideational element of the rite, first as a sign that the brothers will bear each other's cross, and second, as a rite that gives to each of the named brothers a memento of self-renunciation and faithfulness to his friend. What is adelphopoiesis? The profound thinker N.F. Fyodorov saw it as a kind of liturgy. The rite of adelphopoiesis, he says, is wholly like a liturgy. It ends with the partaking of the pre-sanctified gifts, such features of this rite as the ingirdling of the participants in the union with one belt, the circling of the lectern during the troparion, watch from heaven and see it, visit thy vine, and approve it, for thy hand has planted it, are not used in the liturgy. Is this not because the church walls serve, so to speak, as a belt linking all those present, while the church processions signify unifications in the course of life and the common work? These considerations are very remarkable, but in connection with them, liturgy is the essence of the liturgy of the catechumens, precisely when church life became secularized and when the union of all men began to be replaced by particular unions. It is very permissible to doubt the correctness of such diminution of this rite. What is precisely of essence here is that church life is antinomic, that is, that it does not consist in a rational formula. Antinomic, and in the aspect considered, church life can be reduced neither to unions that are only particular, nor wholly to a union that is only general. The fact is that both the one and the other, both the general and the particular, irreducible to each other, are equally necessary in church life, and are united in the process of life. Thus, for example, marriage is also a type of liturgy, an analog of the communal liturgy, and not of falling away from it, for one cannot conceive that first there was a group marriage, a general wedding ceremony, and that only subsequently, with secularization of church life, did monogamy begin. The same thing holds for adelphopoiesis. Thus, if we follow Theodorov's thinking to its natural conclusion, it turns out that marriage too, along with other sacraments and rites, must be considered a separation from the liturgy, a product of the corruption of general church life, an obvious error. However, Theodorov's idea, even though it is expressed incorrectly, is in itself correct. Of course, Theodorov is right. In the church there cannot be anything that is not pan-ecclesial, just as there cannot be anything that is not personal. In the church there is no privatsache, just as there is nothing in it of impersonal law, quote-unquote. Every phenomenon of church life is pan-ecclesial in its meaning, but it has a center, a point of special application, where it is not only stronger but even qualitatively wholly other than in other places. Take marriage as an example. The marriage of a member of the church is, of course, the business of the whole universal church, not in the sense that when one of the members marries, all the other members marry his wife, but in the sense that for everyone this event has a certain spiritual significance and is not something indifferent. For each member, the wife of a brother becomes not just anyone, but precisely the wife of the brother. Moreover, for one member she becomes simply a wife, but for the other members she becomes the wife of their brother. This is a distinction not only in degree but also in quality, even though both the one and the other have ecclesial significance. Thus, marriage embraces the husband and wife most proximally, and in a quite special manner we are wed, but it embraces the other members of the church in a wholly other manner. They are wed. The same thing must be said about the liturgy. The liturgy embraces the members of a parish community in a quite special manner. We pray, we take communion, but it embraces all other members of the church in a wholly other manner. They pray, they take communion. In the same way, a certain phenomenon can embrace several communities, an eparchy or several eparchies, and so on. But church life is always never merely in general, nor merely why should we concern ourselves with others. It is never merely a social phenomenon, nor merely a privatsache. It is always universal and general in its significance, and always personal and concrete in its application and appearance. All we have said above holds for adelphopoiesis, just as agapic love must be accompanied by philic love, which is irreducible to but inseparable from agapic love. So liturgical offices of the agapic and philic unions, which are irreducible to each other, must coexist. And it is clear that, just as the two forms of love are analogues of each other, so the corresponding rites of the communal liturgy and of adelphopoiesis are also analogues. But being analogues, that is, being based on a single pattern, they are not at all derivable from each other. This can be compared with the structure of an organism. A hand is formed on the same pattern as a foot. The two are analogues, and the upper part of the body is an analog of the lower part. Nevertheless, the feet are just as necessary as the hands, and the lower part of the body is just as necessary as the upper part. They're not only not replaceable by each other, but one cannot function normally without the other. The general principle of organization is realized in particulars, and the particulars are permeated by the principle of unity. but a concrete diversity and a unifying pattern of organization are also needed. It is this way in church life, too. The general principle, love, lives not only agapically but also philically, and creates a form for itself, not only the communal liturgy, but also the adelphopoiesis of friends. But here the question naturally arises, what power assures the unmergeability of heterogeneous phenomena? What maintains the equilibrium of the principle of the particular and the principle of the general? What spiritual activity, without preventing particular phidic phenomena from being pan-ecclesial, at the same time protects their particularity? It is unquestionable that there must be such an activity, otherwise the Church would not have spiritual equilibrium. This is clearly seen in connection with the following examples, since the wife of a brother must, for every man, be the wife of a brother, but only the wife of this particular brother, and not the wife of every man. There must be some kind of spiritual activity that places her in a wholly particular relation to her husband, and continuously assures the uniqueness of this relation. It is the same way, since for each member of the Church, the friend of a brother must be the friend of a brother, but only the friend of this particular brother, not the friend of everyone. There must necessarily be a force that orders and maintains the individuality of the union of friends. Together with a uniting force that takes one outside individual existence, there must be an isolating force which sets a limit to diffuseness and impersonality. Together with centrifugal force, there must be a centripetal one. This force is jealousy, and it functions to isolate, separate, delimit, differentiate. If this force did not exist, there would be no concrete church life with its specific order. Instead, we would have Protestant, anarchistic, communistic, Tolstoyan, etc., mixing of all with all. We would have total formlessness and chaos. The force of jealousy is alive in both friendship and marriage, in an eparchy as well as in local parish or monastery. It is alive everywhere. Everywhere it is necessary to have definiteness of connections and constancy of unions, be it with a friend, a wife, a starets, a pastor, a bishop, a metropolitan, or a patriarch. In other words, everywhere there must be not only love, but also jealousy. There must be jealousy toward friend, wife, congregation, brothers, eparchy, or local church. We must now get a deeper insight into this concept, which is so important but usually so little explored. Letter 12, jealousy. The epigraph, Mersus ut emergam. I immersed myself in order to emerge. It seems to me that it has become undeniable that the discussion of love in general and of friendship in particular, and of the two in their concrete vitality, almost inevitably raises the question of a phenomenon intimately connected with them, jealousy. It is scarcely disputable that, in practice, this question is of primary importance, but I doubt whether the majority of thinkers are sufficiently conscious of its theoretical importance. In the philosophical literature, the concept of jealousy has been swept far away, and rarely does one deign to glance at it. That is why I think it is necessary to probe more deeply into the concept of jealousy. On the basis of what was said at the end of the last letter, I suggest that the clarification of this concept will, in turn, serve to clarify the concept of friendship and love. And so, what is jealousy? In the well-worn usage of intelligentsia, jealousy is understood to be a vice, or at least unquestionably a moral deficiency, something shameful and worthy of ridicule. The intelligentsia is accustomed to seeing pride, vanity, self-love, suspiciousness, and mistrust as the basis of jealousy. In a word, anything at all except a moral advantage. This view of jealousy especially characterizes the century that was the century of the revolutionary intelligentsia par excellence, the 18th. And jealousy was especially condemned where enlightenment rationality reigned more intolerantly than anywhere else, Paris. Pride and vanity make as many people jealous as love, said Boistier. The love of the jealous resembles hate, testifies Molière. Jealousy comes more from vanity than from love, affirms Madame de Staël. In jealousy there is often more vanity than love, indicates La Rochefoucauld. Crude jealousy is mistrust of the loved object. Delicate jealousy is mistrust of oneself, argues someone else. The most jealous of all lovers are those who love glory, observed Trublet. A jealous person is an infant who is frightened by monsters created in the darkness of his imagination, opines Boistier. A jealous person spends his life searching for a key to a mystery whose revelation destroys his well-being, notes Oxenstierna. Schleiermacher on Grievspazir closed this thought in a play on words. Die Eifersucht mit Eifersucht was Leidenschaft. That is, jealously, zealously seeks what gives suffering, or what is passion, for what one hears is Leidenschaft. Thus, upon his fond, which can be conveyed roughly by jealousy, jealously seeks what is passion. Of the ailments of the mind, jealousy is that whose food is the greatest number of things, but whose medicine is the least number of things, affirms Noel. Jealousy has a lynx's eyes, says Bellamy. Thus, love and jealousy are incompatible. When self-love predominates over jealousy, love has lost its power, affirms Lengret. Jealousy extinguishes love as ash extinguishes a fire, says the Queen of Navarre. Strong passions are above jealousy, we read in La Rochefoucauld. This somewhat diffused and popular understanding of jealousy found a finished and psychologically motivated form in the lapidary definition of jealousy given by Spinoza. Jealousy is love full of hate for the object loved and envy toward another who is loved by the love object. Here, Spinoza very aptly uses the figure of the mixing of two liquids. When interpenetrating, they become turbulent and turbid, which is designated by the term fluctuatio. So it is with jealousy. Love and hate, in mixing, form fluctuatio, a turbulence of the soul, owing to which the consciousness becomes turbid and opaque. Jealousy, according to Spinoza, is precisely such a fluctuatio of the soul, occurring from both love and hate, accompanied by the idea of a third of whom the soul is envious. Hoc odium erga rem amatum, invidiae junctum zelotipia, vocator quae proinde, nihil aliud est, quam animi fluctuatio orta ex amore et odio simul, concomitante ad idee alterius qui invideret. Here are the arguments by which Spinoza arrives at his classic definition of jealousy. Love, he says, strives to achieve reciprocity, and even the most perfect reciprocity. Every diminution and every loss experienced by us in this regard are felt to be a self-diminution, to cause great pain. The most perfect reciprocal love is all-engulfing love. We wish to possess it fully. It is our supreme happiness, which we do not wish to share with anyone. If a loved being loves someone more than us, we feel ourselves to be unhappy without limit. The cause of our unhappiness is the object of our hate. We will therefore hate the loved one, because he deprives us of his reciprocity, and we will envy the one who enjoys this reciprocity. A love, therefore, arises that simultaneously hates and envies, and this love is jealousy. This passion is particularly powerful if our happiness has been usurped by another. And the more powerful is the past happiness, the more intense will be the jealousy, and the latter, if it is not tamed by some other force, will darken our entire soul. The power of hate for a loved object is directly proportional to the power of the preceding love. Here are the most important relevant theorems. Proposition 35. Si quis imaginatur rem amatum iodem fel arctiore vinculo amititiae quo ipse iadum solus potiabatur alium sibi jungere odio erga ipsam afficiabatur et iliateri invidibit. That is, if one imagines that the thing he loves is found with someone else in the same or a closer relation of friendship than that by virtue of which he possessed it alone, then he will be possessed by hate toward the loved thing and envy toward the other individual. Proposition 36. Qui rei quam semel delectatus est, recordatur cupit iadem cum iisdem potiri circumstantis tiis ac cum primo ipsa delectatus est. That is, one who remembers a thing from which he once received pleasure will desire to possess it under the same circumstances as when he enjoyed it the first time. Proposition 37. Cupidatis quiae prae tristitia vel laetitia precu odio vel amore oritur eo est major quo affectus major est. That is, a desire arising as a result of dissatisfaction or displeasure as a result of hate or love is the stronger, the greater these effects. Proposition 38. Si quis rem amatum odio babere inciperit ita ut amor plene abolietor iandem majore odio expari causa prosequitur quam si ipsam nunquam amaviset et eo majori quo amor antea major forat. That is, if one has begun to hate a thing that he loved, so that love is completely destroyed, then, for the same reason, he will feel toward it a greater hate than if he had never loved it, and the greater his former love, the greater the hate felt now. According to the popular conception, jealousy is a harmful and ugly growth on love. The causes of jealousy are alien to the essence of love, and therefore it is usually believed that jealousy can be eliminated from love. Spinoza sees a closer connection between love and jealousy. For him, jealousy is not an accidental companion of love, but a faithful shadow that appears on the screen of the soul's life every time love is eliminated by the loved one's betrayal. Or, more precisely, jealousy, according to Spinoza, is a necessary equivalent of love, appearing when relations take a turn for the worse. Love does not disappear, but is transformed into jealousy. Nevertheless, a love without jealousy is conceivable in Spinoza's analysis. The condition for this is perfect reciprocity, so that jealousy, although it is necessarily psychologically under certain conditions, acquires in Spinoza's eyes a negative valuation as animi fluctuatio, a darkening of consciousness, an untamable passion. For Spinoza, jealousy in love is not love. Therefore, as heterogeneous with respect to love as non-love, although it is in a causal relation, a relation of equivalence with love, jealousy is condemnable. Thus, Spinoza too in some agrees with the well-worn popular understanding of jealousy. How did this happen? To answer this question, let us remember the lifeless and reified character of Spinoza's entire philosophy. Not having the category of the person, Spinoza cannot distinguish between love for a person and desire for a thing. He confuses love and desire, or more precisely, he replaces the former with the latter. Everywhere in Spinoza we see the impersonal res amata, which must be translated as a thing desired, for a thing cannot be loved. Yes, res amata, but nowhere is there mention of a loved person. Only to a person can the epithet loved be applied. True, in contemporary society we frequently hear, I love jam, I love cigars, I love to play cards, and so forth. But for any healthy person it is clear that this is either a perversion and darkening of consciousness, or a violence done to language. Jam, cigars, cards, and so forth cannot be loved. They can only be desired. But the correlate of desire is hate with envy, which is why Spinoza, in the original notion of love, places such a stress on this condemnable element of hate with envy. However, as love is not desire, so the combination of hate with envy is not jealousy, although true jealousy does have the same relation to what Spinoza thinks jealousy is, as true love has to desire. To understand jealousy in its proper nature, one must even connect it more intimately with love. One must introduce it into the very heart of love, and having underscored the personal nature of love, one must disclose that jealousy is love itself, but in love's outer being, quote unquote. One must disclose that jealousy is a necessary condition and inevitable side of love, but a side that is turned towards sorrow, so that to destroy jealousy would be to destroy love. In the same way, desire always contains hate with envy. To demonstrate this, one must first remove from jealousy the element of condemnation that burdens it. Jealousy has so often been confused with certain reprehensible forms of its manifestation that even the words jealousy and jealous have become words of condemnation. To see the essence of jealousy in suspiciousness, petty self-love, mistrust, ill will, malice, hate with envy, and so forth, is just as wrong as to posit the essence of love in the deprivation of freedom, in partiality, injustice, and so forth, or to see the essence of justice in coldness, hardness of heart, cruelty. Suspiciousness, hate with envy, and so forth are all bad, reprehensible, egotistical manifestations of jealousy produced by the confusion of love with desire. Meanwhile, two series of historical data hint at the neutral character or even the positive, good, necessary character of jealousy. First, the nation with the purest God consciousness, the chosen Jewish nation, knowing and understanding the love of God more clearly than any other nation, insistently, constantly, and unhesitatingly speaks of God's jealousy. The whole Bible is saturated and permeated with God's jealousy, and it is impossible to ignore this fact. Secondly, the nation of the purest humanity, the genius nation, the Greeks, knowing and understanding human love in all its forms better than any other nation, also has the trait of jealousy as its most fundamental trait, as its most typical and inalienable trait. In his sketches for the meditation, we are philologists. Nietzsche, among three selected points from antiquity, indicates for development the ennoblement of jealousy. The Greeks are the most jealous nation. Once again, one cannot ignore this. If both the purest genius and the purest faith posit jealousy as a positive necessary force in the essence of love, both human and divine, this means that jealousy is in fact such, and that it is in no wise identical with the secondary passions that accompany it. But what, in this case, is jealousy itself? It is one of the aspects of love, the foundation of love, the background of love, the primordial darkness in which the ray of love shines. Love is free choice. For many persons, I, by an act of inner self-determination, choose one person, and to this person, one of many, I establish a unique relation, become attached in my soul to this person. I wish to view this person who is ordinary as extraordinary. I wish to view this person who is gray and drab as festive. I wish to view this quite average person as a triumph. This person stands in a crowd, but I summon him, and from the city square, I lead him into the cozy room of my heart. I inscribe this person's image on a gold medallion, and this is just, for this image is not a caricature such as people draw in the majority of cases. It is not even a portrait painted by sages. It is rather an image of the divine image, an icon. Violating the validity, quote-unquote, of the law of identity, I, by a metaphysical act of self-determination, not by the rational mind, but by my whole being, decide to see in the chosen person, one of many, an exclusive person who stands out from others. In other words, I make myself in relation to the chosen person such that this person becomes thou for me. Friendship, I repeat, is exclusive, just as conjugal love is exclusive. Multiple is a sign of the imperfection of the object of love as such, a sign of the incompleteness of thou as thou. Both multiple marriage and multiple friendship are false in their very idea, and must inevitably either pass into something personal, the first into single marriage, the second into single friendship, or become corrupt and decay utterly, the first in lust, the second in greed. That is, from semi-personal, they must become thing-like. Aristotle says one cannot be a friend to many when one has in view perfect friendship, just as one cannot at a single time be in love with many. This kind of friendship appears to be perfection, and as such can be directed at only one person. But even if one were to say here that there are many, quote-unquote, such beloved thous, nevertheless, toward each one, the relation, in the case of love, would be as to a unique one. Every love, in essence, as a selecting power, is delectio. The loved one is therefore always a selected one, a unique one. It is this that constitutes the personal nature of love, without which we would be dealing with desire, whose object is a thing, and with indifference as to whether the desired thing is replaced by a thing equal to it. The demand for a numerical identity with a beloved person, even in the absence of a generic identity, that is, faithfulness to a person even when this person changes, characterizes both love and the violation of love by the law of identity. On the other hand, the demand for a generic identity with the desired things, in the case of indifference to numerical identity, even when this identity is not understood, and therefore the observance of the law of identity, characterized desire. Awareness of uniqueness is the condition of love, even in its most imperfect manifestations. Moreover, even the illusion of love requires, if not uniqueness, at least the illusion of uniqueness, unrepeatability, exclusiveness, even if the loving one's belief that the beloved is unique is as ungrounded as every first love's belief that it is unique in the world and history, as ungrounded as the belief of each of Kant's uniquely legitimate quote-unquote heirs and interpreters, that he is in fact Kant's unique heir and interpreter, or as ungrounded as the belief of Stirner's unique one, that he is unique. Otherwise, even the illusion of love would be absolutely impossible, and only greed, dirt, and death would exist in relationships. The very thought of the possibility of the replacement of one person by another, a thought grounded in the acceptance of homoousia, that is, thingness, is a sinful thought leading to death. By an incomprehensible act of choice, a person is made unique, is called to the high or royal rank of thou. This person has agreed to this election. He has said yes, and placed upon his own head the crown of greatness. What do I want now? Only one thing, that which I had desired, that is, my own love. I affirm the act of my own love as eternal in value, and I therefore demand that it abide, that it not be voided. This inner conviction expresses itself as the zeal or jealousy that aspires to embody in time its eternal act of the election of the beloved thou. My wish is that thou not hinder me in my love, that with respect to me it really be thou, that the beloved thou behave as unique. Let it not step down from its pedestal of uniqueness, of chosenness. It makes no difference if the chosen thou is the most ordinary person in a crowd and for the crowd. But for me, for the one who chooses, the chosen thou must be precisely thou and nothing but thou. Otherwise, love itself would be impossible. Otherwise, the very act of election could not be embodied in time. Otherwise, the time of love would not be the mobile image of eternity, of election. With respect to me, thou must act as thou, not as one of many. Thou must wear a royal crown, not a nightcap. The consciousness that this is needed from thou for the very possibility of love entails the desire of realizing this chosenness and then affirming and protecting it. All this taken together will be jealousy. But what if thou does not want this? What if thou stubbornly betrays its freely accepted rank and position? What if thou, after having said yes to the proposal of a new essence for it, that is, thou, shows with its life, shows through frivolousness, stubbornness, or insufficient sincerity in the acceptance of this high rank, that for it I am not I? What if, wishing to be thou, it does not wish to recognize me as me? Then I cannot and should not remain without counteraction. This counteraction is the manifestation of jealousy toward my love, that is, concern about the purity, genuineness, and preservation of my love. The fact that I demand this from thou in the name of the very possibility of love entails the desire to realize this chosenness, to strengthen and protect it. All this taken together, I repeat, will be jealousy. One of two must hold. Either thou must recognize this counteraction to itself, this struggle for love, this jealousy, and change, or thou must renounce its high rank, recognize that it is ordinary, and return from its throne into the grey crowd, from triumph to drab averageness. For me, it is impossible to love and not to be jealous when thou stops being thou. That is, I cannot fail to attempt again to make it thou. Therefore, if my right and duty of jealousy are not recognized, my only recourse is to cast thou from its throne. I must forget about thou, stop loving thou, for only in this way can thou be freed from the demand of requited love. But thou has grown into me, has become part of me. To stop loving is to lose a part of myself. To forget is to cut a piece of living flesh from myself. This is what happens when, respecting the freedom of another, one finds it necessary to tear love from one's breast together with one's heart. Love is boundless. It is limited neither by place nor by time. It is universal. But this universality of love not only does not exclude, but even presupposes isolatedness and separateness. For the holiness in one's soul is love's root, and love is possible only insofar as this holiness is alive. To protect the pearl of the soul is to protect love itself, not to care about the holiness in one's soul is not to care about love. Love is not only universal, it is also limited. Love is not only boundless, it is also bounded. What the Lord said about this is now considered unacceptable. It is thought to be harsh and cruel. But what is most remarkable is that in the mother of all books, the Gospel, this speech of the Lord's comes right after what he said about not judging one's neighbor and the parable of the beam and the mote in the eye. Thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye. Matthew 7:5. This thought is met by the antithetical thought, as if a knife blade were directed against a knife blade. Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet, and turn again and rend you. As if clarifying this saying, St. Seraphim of Sarov teaches us, what is best in the heart we should not reveal without need. Do not reveal the mysteries of your heart to all. Thus, on the one hand, do not judge, but on the other hand, consider dogs and swine those who are not worthy of having the mysteries of their heart revealed to them. Reveal these mysteries only to certain chosen ones, who are separated from the swineherd. This is antinomy, and this antinomy is roughly equivalent to the love-jealousy antinomy. For a rough clarification of what I have said, let me present several more fragments from the previously cited diary. This is the record of some real or imagined conversation with a friend. You behave yourself in such and such a way. You hide, you are secretive, you desire complete self-sufficiency, you are oppressed by confessions, both your own and that of your friend. Yes, but do you not know that I act this way always and everywhere? That's not completely true. You scarcely act this way with everyone, always and everywhere, but even if that were the case, for me that is not an answer. Friendship is friendship precisely because something is transmitted to me from another person and something is transmitted to another person from me. Therefore, relationships are relationships precisely because they relate someone to someone else, because they lead one out of the self-enclosedness of egotism and the heart's narrowness, because they extend the being of a person, as Spinoza said. But, understand me, what if my nature, my very essence, is like that? What of it? Everyone's nature is like that, egotistical and narrow. But friendship precisely opens the path to an influx of new reality. The purpose of friendship is that we should not be cold eunuchs of the heart. After all, the state of being a eunuch of the heart is the worst of vices, the most terrible thing that can befall a man. But what if I am always a eunuch? In love, a person stops being as it is always, everywhere, and with everyone. The old age, the decrepitude of the soul passes, the soul is renewed and becomes young. But do we not have a relationship? We do manage to stay together somehow. This somehow is precisely the problem. If there is no such relationship as the one I talked about, if the relationship does not relate anyone and ties do not bind anyone, then there is no relationship at all, and the persons concerned are not in a friendship, not one in the other, but in themselves and by themselves, in self-love. If you remain with me as with everyone and act in relation to me as always and everywhere, this proves better than anything that you do, that you know neither friendship nor relationships nor ties. Understand me, it is not your love or not love that I want, not your friendship or enmity, but simple certainty, so that I would know if it is worth exhausting myself and expending my strength on this field of friendship in hope of a distant harvest, or if I should renounce the thought of a better future, abandon this fruitless, stony field, and occupy myself then with my own affairs. But you are deaf, attending indifferently to good and evil. You are silent. How long will this last? A heart wounded by a friend will not be healed by anything except by time and death. Time removes the heart's wounds, cutting away the stricken part of the heart. It kills in part. But death annihilates the whole man to the extent that a man is alive. The wounds that friendship causes in him are unhealable and festering, and he will bear them until he is able to present them to the eternal judge. Look at the Lord's parable about those who are called and those who are chosen. Matthew 22, 2-14, and Luke 14, 16-24. How much hidden bitterness there is in this parable, the infinite bitterness and pain of a heart wounded in its very love. There are those who are loved, who are called, those whom the Lord himself loved jealously, for whom he did everything what he did not do for any other people. And what happened? They do not desire to be chosen. They do not desire their own salvation. They do not even desire to show simple delicacy to answer the call of love, which is giving them its supreme gift, making them its friends. They are indifferent to the love of love. But then, go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city and bring in hither the poor and the maimed and the halt and the blind. And when there were still places to be filled, go out into the highways and hedges and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. A banquet of love which no one will attend, which was prepared for those dear to one's heart. but which turned out to be filled with passers-by from the street. One should be doing everything, should do everything in friendship to overcome the wall standing between persons. One should not spare one's strength. One should not fight strenuously for communion under the blood of the martyr, unto death. One should lay down one's life for one's friends, for the first thing that one's friends should be delivered from is insincerity, coldness, and self-enclosedness. But there is a boundary that one cannot cross. There is a wall that one can break through neither by a forehead nor by a battering ram. And when one comes up to this boundary, when one stands right next to it, then it is necessary to go away. With heart's sorrow, it is necessary to tear the feeling out of oneself, even if this is to tear off a piece of living flesh. One must free oneself from what is impossible, and what is impossible here is to show another person that the impossible, that is, love, is possible. The world's Savior himself, when he came to this boundary and the people chosen by God, and when he saw the impossibility of conquering this people with love, turned back. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets, and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. Matthew 23. From the foregoing analysis of the concept of jealousy, we see that there is a profound connection between jealousy and the overcoming of the law of identity, this primordial ground of rationality. It is therefore clear why jealousy, even in its purest manifestations, attracts the sidelong glance of ill will from rationality, why good sense and its natural daughter, mockery, so eagerly attack jealousy even when the latter is taken in abstracto, in principle. Both love and jealousy, this other love, struggle with rationality, and their thrust breaks through rationality's main part, that is, the law of identity. In this sense, jealousy is profoundly unjust. If, because of its irrationality, jealousy is intellectually condemned as an absurdity, then this injustice of jealousy in turn provokes an indignant moral valuation of it as an immoral phenomenon. This is yet another cause of the darkening of the concept of jealousy examined by us. The data of etymology confirm the conclusions to which we have been led by the metaphysical analysis of the notion of jealousy. In Russian, the notion of jealousy, revnost, is primarily characterized as power, as force, as tension, but not as fear, hate, or envy. Certain authors compare the Russian revniv, jealous, and its derivatives, revnovat, to be jealous of, and revnost, jealousy, with the Latin rivalis, rivinus, rival, and with the French rival, rivaliser, rivalite. But even as if this is the case, it remains unclear what the meaning of the root of this word is. It is not difficult to answer this question. Revniv, through its old Slavic form, rivniv, is of the same family as revnier, revnostnie, revnitiel, zeal, zealous, zealot. For these latter, the old Slavic derivatives are revnier, revniye, rivan, that is lukta, battle. Revnost, jealousy. Revnost, jealousy, is evidently the same thing as revniye, zeal. In revnivye, a jealous person, is evidently the same thing as revnitiel, a zealot. While revnovat, to be jealous, is the same thing as revat, or rather revatsia, to fight in battle. The Serbian rvati has the sense of eniti, while revati se has the sense of seatari. Here one can note a relationship with the Sanskrit arvan, running headlong, hurrying, and aurva, rapid on horseback, with the Greek orefonto, they hurried, orou ei, orou ei, to hurry, to rush, with the Latin ruit, with the Old Saxon aru, and the Old Nordic or, rapid, ready, on horseback. Both, to be zealous and to be jealous, signify, according to their root, the presence of force, power, a powerful movement towards something. This is the opposite of flaccidity, impotence, weakness. That is why renovat is often used in the sense of forcefully and energetically moving towards something, of being energetic in some endeavor. Revnovat shego, according to Dal, signifies to strive zealously towards something. Thus one hears revnuiu, znani, znani, revnuiu, niebeznego carstwa. Renuite je darovanie bolshik. I ardently wish to learn, I aspire to the kingdom of heaven, zealously desire high gifts. Revnovat quam, to be jealous of someone, has the sense of competing, of imitating, of following, of striving headlong without conceding. Thus Lomonosov used the locution Revnuite nasciamo primero, be jealous of our example. And in the same way one hears Ya всегда ревновал успехам его. I have always been jealous of his successes, and so on. Hence we can conclude decisively that revnost primarily signifies, as Dal indicates, ardor, zeal, and even essentially zeal directed toward some work. In this sense, one hears the expressions revnost po sluzhbie, zeal of service, and revnost не по разуму, unreasonable zeal. In addition, revnostny signifies most assiduous, diligent, one who takes great care, who gives himself with all his soul to the work. Thus we get the expression revnostye pobornik pravdi, ardent champion of the truth. In the same way the Greek zealos, or in the Doric form zalos, signifies ardor, zeal, also rivalry, hate, and only finally jealousy, in the sense that the word commonly has in the language of the intelligentsia, a sense that no nation attributes to it. Accordingly, the verb zealuo signifies to seek ardently, to desire strongly. As far as the etymology of these words is concerned, there is such an abundance of hypotheses, all of them artificial, here that it would be perilous to say anything definite. Let us only indicate that, according to Porelvitz, zealous derives from the root ya, that is, to be ardent. Heftig sein, just as the verb ziteo signifies to seek to attain some object. Latin does not give us anything new in this case. Zealotupia, jealousy, is taken from the Greek and consequently derives from zealous. Finally, in Hebrew, both zeal, aifer, and jealousy, aifer sucht, are expressed by the same word, kinea, derived from the Semitic root kin. This trigram does not contain any nuance of the jealousy of the intelligentsia. Thus in Arabic it has the sense of becoming very red, hochrot werden, while in Syrian it means to be of a dark color, dunkelfarbig sein. Hence, in Hebrew and in other Semitic languages, the root kin signifies to be zealous, passionate. The word kiana signifies first of all the passion of love with ardor, then rivalry, as well as jealousy, God's jealousy for his glory. Another Hebrew word exists that is considered by some to be the equivalent of the Russian revnost, shekidah, but even less than kina. Does this word express the notion of jealousy in the specific sense of the world? In fact, this word is derived from the Semitic shkod, which in Phoenician corresponds to the notion of respecting, honoring, appreciating something. Aufet was achten, while in the languages of Mishnah and Targums, it acquired the sense of to be zealous, eifrig sein. Thus, our general conclusion is that the etymology and the usage of the word jealousy and its derivatives unquestionably confirm the previously given metaphysical analysis of the concept of jealousy. That is to say, the condemnation hanging over jealousy is removed completely, and jealousy is recognized as only a necessary expression, or, more precisely, only a necessary aspect of powerful love. This clarifies why Scripture so often and so stubbornly attributes jealousy to God. Indeed, it would be wholly incomprehensible how a state reprehensible in itself could be an image of something in the divine life.
For no anthropopathisms will ever enable one to attribute sin, lust, or falsehood to God. If jealousy is attributed to him, however we understand this divine jealousy, one can affirm in advance that it is something holy. Therefore, human jealousy is not something intrinsically foul and reprehensible. From the clarifications made here, it is evident that, in this attribution of jealousy to God, one must not see a strained anthropopathism, pathos, but a precise description of the essence of the matter. For jealousy is an ontological concept, not a psychological or ethical one. But more than being a necessary aspect of love, jealousy, according to the generalizing interpretation of St. Isaac the Syrian, is a necessary aspect of all that is good in man. Speaking generally, jealousy is the power that realizes good wishes. Quote, he who has good wishes cannot be prevented from realizing them. This occurs for the following reason: every thought of a good wish at the beginning of its movement is followed by a certain jealousy, which is similar in its hotness to burning coals, and jealousy usually guards this thought and does not allow it to be approached by any resistance, barrier, or obstacle, because this jealousy acquires a great strength and an ineffable power of always protecting the soul from frailty or fear, as all kinds of difficult circumstances assault it. And as that thought is the power of a holy wish, planted by nature in the soul's essence, so this jealousy is a thought moved by a stimulating power in the soul, a power given to us by God for our use, for the observance of the natural limit, for the expression of the concept of one's freedom, by the fulfillment of a natural wish found in the soul. This is the virtue without which the good is not realized, and this virtue is called jealousy, because it moves, excites, and fortifies us. Someone has called this jealousy the dog and protector of the divine law, that is, a virtue. Further, St. Isaac explains that jealousy is composed of the fear of losing the good and of the striving to hold it. That is why the weakening of jealousy is a bad sign, determined either by a spiritual cooling or by self-reliance and pride, that is, by relation to the spiritual good which is not living and personal but proprietary and fleshly, as to a thing that can be placed under a lock and key, and that, even without it being experienced, can be possessed. Thus a striving to attain the pillar and ground of the truth is realized and preserved by jealousy, this force of our spirit that is persecuted and held in contempt by the contemporary consciousness. Afterward, propter constantium, for constancy. Now, at the end of a path that has not been short, it is appropriate to look back and, from the height attained, to survey the path one has taken in the starting point. There are two worlds, and this world falls utterly apart in contradictions, unless it lives by the powers of that world. Contra feelings appear in one's mood, contra desires in one's will, and contra thoughts in one's thought. Antinomies split apart our entire being, the whole life of creation. Everywhere and always there are contradictions, but by contrast in faith, which overcomes the antinomies of consciousness and breaks through their all-suffocating crust, a rock-like affirmation is acquired from which one can strive to overcome the antinomies of the actual world. But how can one approach this rock of faith? The contradictions of feeling compel one to turn to the will, but here too one hears the outcries of discordant voices. Then we turn to the rational mind, but it too is not whole, but disintegrates in antinomies. There are an uncountable number of antinomies. There are as many of them as there can be acts of the rational mind. But, as we have already noted, antinomies are essentially reducible to the dilemma, finitude or infinitude. This antagonism of finitude and infinitude is, in the sinful rational mind, is an expression of the profoundest contradiction between the fundamental norms of reason itself and its present fallen state. By its sinful nature, the rational mind has an antonymic cast, for this mind has two laws, two centers, two axes,
That is to say, the statics and the dynamics of the rational mind exclude one another, although the one cannot exist without the other. On the one hand, in the static plane, in the plane of the fixed givenness of concepts, every A is A, and the whole power of thought consists precisely in delimiting every A from not A, and in holding firmly to this delimitation. In order to think A, we must isolate it from everything that is not A, that is, we must define and delimit A by separating it from not A. A, as thinkable, is, by the essence of the matter, something finite. We cannot think a process without dividing it into a succession of steady states, into a succession of moments of unchangeability. And we also cannot think a continuum without dividing it into a discontinuous combination of point elements. We divide motion into a series of states of rest, as in motion pictures. We divide a continuum into a multiplicity of further indivisible elements. This serves as the basis of the eternally true, whatever arguments one might try to raise against them, paradoxes, quote-unquote, of Zeno, for example, the paradox of the flying arrow, etc. On the other hand, in the dynamic plane, in the plane of striving toward the ground of concepts, that is, in the plane of definition and proof, every A must have its ground in not A. The essence of every explanation is precisely in the reduction of A to that which itself is not A, to not A, for otherwise the explanation would be a tautology. When we ask what is A, we are given the answer A is B. In other words, A is derived from its self-identity. A equals A and is equated with B with what is not identical to A. To think clearly and distinctly is to take A to mean precisely A and nothing else. To explain and to prove is to transcend A in one's thought, to move to B. To think clearly and distinctly is to hold firmly to A and not to err from it to not A. To explain, that is, to define and to prove, is to go from A to B to what is not A. But in order to go from A to B, one must first establish A as A. That is, in order to explain or to prove A, one must first think it clearly and distinctly. But in order to think clearly and distinctly, one must understand this A. That is, one must explain it, that is, define and prove it. One must establish A as not A. But for the latter, it is once again necessary to establish A as A. And so the process goes on ad infinitum. One function of the reason presupposes the other, but one also excludes the other. Every non-tautological explanation reduces A to not A. All clear and distinct thinking establishes the identity A equals A. The affirmation of A as A and the affirmation of A as not A are the two fundamental moments of thought. On the one hand, there is a static multiplicity of concepts, for each one of many A's becomes fixed in its opposition to all others. On the other hand, there is their dynamic unity, for each of the many A's is reduced to another, this other to a third, and so on. The static multiplicity of concepts and their dynamic unity are incompatible. For on the one hand, the rational mind must hold firmly to the given, that is, the single and finite, that is, the limited, while on the other hand, it must go beyond all givenness, that is, singleness and finiteness, that is, limitedness. For every explanation requires an infinite series of explanatory or proving links, each of which violates the self-identity of the concept of what is being explained. This violation of self-identity, I repeat, can never be finished, because every definition requires a new definition and every proof requires a new proof. If we previously defined and proved A through B, their earlier questions are repeated now in relation to B. As soon as an answer is given to them for B, by defining or proving them through C, they are then repeated for C, and so on. Thus, the first of the norms of the rational mind requires cessation of thought, while the second requires an unlimited movement of thought. The first compels the establishment of A, while the second compels its reduction to B. The first is the law of identity, while the second is the law of sufficient reason. We scarcely need to mention here that, throughout our whole investigation, we have taken the law of identity to mean the combination of the analytic laws of thought, or the so-called logical law of form, that is, the law of identity and its inevitable companions, the law of contradiction and the law of the excluded middle. For all three speak in their different ways about the same thing, that is, they express, as G. Hagemann indicates, the requirement that the object of thought be thought as this one and no other, and that in this object all the determinations that belong to it be combined. Or as Wilhelm Wundt remarks, the law of identity simply signifies the connectedness, Stetigkeit, of our thought. Being a fundamental law of knowledge,
It describes above all the behavior of our thought in relation to an object. Similarly, R. Schubert Solden considers the laws of identity and contradiction to be merely two different sides of the law, that all is given in a certain primordial difference insofar as they emanate from a multiplicity, Vielheit, and that this multiplicity does not exist where difference does not exist. One could present yet other confirmations of the view that all three analytic laws reveal a single activity, a disunification, delimitation, and establishment of the object of thought, the statics of thought, a kind of logical jealousy. But let us remain satisfied with what has been said. One can reduce all the norms of rationality to the law of identity, understood in the sense just clarified, and to the law of sufficient reason, but these fundamental norms are incompatible, and their disharmony destroys reason. The warp of rationality is the law of identity, and its woof is the law of sufficient reason. The fabric of rationality, woven of finitude and infinitude, of bad infinity, limitlessness, is torn to shreds in contradictions. The rational mind needs both of its norms equally. It can operate neither without the principle of finitude nor without the principle of infinitude, nor can it operate when both principles are used, for they are not compatible. The norms of rationality are necessary, but they are impossible. Rationality turns out to be thoroughly antinomic in its innermost structure. Kant's antinomies just barely allow one to look behind the scenes of reason, but being set forth with full consciousness and against the Enlightenment were the challenge to the rationalism of the 18th century. They are the great moral achievement of the Copernicus of philosophy. This antinomicalness of the fundamental structure of rationality poses an essential question about reason. How is rationality possible? The present work in its entirety is an attempt to answer this question. How is rationality possible? The answer to this question went like this. Rationality is possible not in itself, but through the object of its thought, and if, and only if, it has an object of thought in which both contradictory laws of its activity, that is, the law of identity and the law of sufficient reason, coincide. In other words, it is possible only for a thought for which both grounds of rationality, that is, the principle of finitude and the principle of infinitude, actually become one. Also, rationality is possible in the case when, by the nature of its object, the self-identity of rationality is also its alter affirmation, and conversely, when its alter affirmation is also its self-identity. Also, rationality is possible when the finitude conceived by it is an infinitude, and conversely, when the infinitude conceived by rationality is a finitude. Finally, rationality is possible if absolute actual infinity is given to it. But what is this infinity, capital I? It turns out that such an object, capital O, of thought, making thought possible, is the trihypostatic unity. The trihypostatic unity, the subject of all of theology, the theme of the whole liturgy, and the commandment of all of life, is also the root of reason. Rationality is possible because there is a tri-radiant lamp, and it is possible to the extent that it lives by the light of this lamp. Our further task was to clarify the formal and then the real conditions of the givenness of such an object, such a finite infinity or consubstantial trinity. The question of believed faith, fides quam creditur, passed into the question of believing faith, fides qua creditur, and therefore to the mode of its appearance. Having clarified the what and the how of faith, we faced a new question, that of the conditions of the appearance of faith. Either or characterizes these conditions in accordance with the freedom of the act of faith. Either is Gehenna or is ascesis. Either or. Between Gehenna and ascesis, tertium non datur. But both means are grounded in the dual nature of the subject of faith. We consider this duality of creation next, but here the question became two questions. First, we examine the unconditional nature of creation, and then the conditions of life under which the empirical character is worked out. The first question, based on the idea of the image of God in man, comes down to the question of the mystical church. The second question, based on the idea of the likeness of God in man, is the question of the church and its earthly and properly human aspect as a medium for each man's accomplishment of his ascesis. The psychological soil for this aspect of church life is love and friendship, agape and philia. So moves the consciousness to the pillar and ground of the truth. Thus, once again asking ourselves what the pillar and ground of the truth is, we mentally run through the series of answers given here. The pillar of the truth is the church. It is certitude. It is the spiritual law of identity. It is ascesis. It is the trihypostatic unity. It is the light of Tabor. It is the Holy Spirit. It is chastity or spiritual integrity. It is Sophia. It is the most pure virgin. It is friendship. It is, once more, the church. To arrive at the truth, it is necessary to free oneself from one's selfhood, to go out of oneself. But for us, this is impossible, for we are flesh. But, I repeat, how precisely, in this case, can one grasp hold of the pillar of the truth? We do not know and cannot know. We know only that, through the yawning cracks of human rationality, the azure of eternity is visible. This is unfathomable, but it is so. And we know that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not the God of the philosophers and scholars, comes to us, comes to our place of nocturnal rest, takes us by the hand, and leads us in a way we could not have conceived of. With men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. Matthew 19:26, Mark 10:27. And here the truth itself compels man to seek the truth. Auti he alietea anagazai ton anthropon alitein epizitein. The triune truth itself does for us what for us is impossible. The trihypostatic truth itself draws us to itself. Glory to this truth forever. Let us worship the Father, His Son, and the Holy Spirit, the Holy Trinity in one being, calling with the seraphim, Lord, thou art thrice holy. Amen.
Предложенный честных даре, Господу помолимся. Господи, помилуй. О святем храме сем, и с верою, благоговением и страхом Божиим ходящий конь,